Sisson back on the hot seat. Usually we have a very tight agenda for our podcast. We did a great one covering the book 2 Meals a Day. Go watch that video, listen to that show. Yep. And this time there's some loose ends lying around. Usually we get to talking when we're sitting at lunch or doing a workout or something. So I wanted to bring some of these hot topics of the health and fitness scene, especially the breaking insights and ways that we're progressing our thinking, and see what you think.
Okay, let's do it. I mean, all I got is opinions.
And the first one that comes to mind is this idea that the story of insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, is not quite as simple as what we've been talking about for so long, that you eat too many carbs, you produce too much insulin, and you store fat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's easy for a lot of people to understand, and it was kind of the driving force behind our initial recommendation to cut carbs. And in cutting carbs, you get control of insulin, and you get control of insulin, sort of all the other hormones fall into place. Leptin, ghrelin, glucagon, all these other contributory hormones fall into place if you can get insulin under control. And recently, new information, new research shows that the inclusion of these potentially harmful industrial seed oils in our diet may be more insidious and causing more harm than we ever suspected, especially in light of or in the realm of insulin resistance. So soybean oil, canola oil, corn oil, these highly processed oils that are high in omega-6 fats that contain damaged polyunsaturated fatty acids that can be incorporated into, they're really not combusted as fuel the way other fats might be combusted. They're often incorporated into cells and may, impact the way mitochondria function. So they may impede mitochondrial function, which in turn has an impact on insulin resistance. So the insulin resistance thing is still a critical concern, and it's something that we want to address, and we want to include the elimination of industrial seed oils in addition to the cutting back on sugars and processed grains and things like that.
So you're consuming these seed oils, and it interferes with healthy fat burning, burning of healthy fat cells.
Right.
And if you can't burn fat, and you try to go cut carbs and go keto, and
you'll be miserable.
You'll default over to
simple
a reliance
carbs
on the dietary carbs.
Yeah, exactly.
Since you're not good at burning stored body fat.
No, exactly. It's just catch-22 in the worst way. It's a perfect storm of the insulin resistance locking the fat inside the fat cells, and the bloodstream lacking in its access to an energy substrate, and then causing the brain to go seek out this simple carbohydrate that it's become so reliant on, and therefore we wind up consuming these super palatable, highly infused with sugar and processed carbs, and then we start down this roller coaster of carb dependency that many of us never get off of.
So the super palatable foods, the hyper palatable foods. Kate Shanahan's been doing a great job talking about this in association with the seed oils. Rob Wolf and Wired to Eat making these points that the overconsumption of this is inevitable, because these are foods that are never found in nature, where you're putting fat and simple sugars together, and it kind of hijacks the appetite, the reward center in the brain.
Yeah, so the brain typically never really gets a sensation that it's time to stop eating. It just continuously stays hungry, because the types of food that people are consuming, because they're hyper palatable, because they're overly processed, they don't have the same impact on the satiety systems that would otherwise say, all right, that's enough. I'm full. I feel great. I don't need to eat anymore, which is what happens with natural, real foods that we promote so much in Primal Blueprint and Keto Reset and all the books that we've done. So yeah, this hijacking of the satiety systems is a big thing for a lot of people.
Let's see. Can we think of any examples of pairing fat and sugar together? Ice cream.
Yeah.
Pizza.
Chips.
Just about anything in a box, wrapped, frozen, processed. Yeah. All the things we love. The hot fudge sundae.
Yeah, and you know, the early on in the days of paleo and primal, when the message got out that fat is not the enemy and fat is, you know, not the proximate cause of heart disease by itself, and that we would be well served by eating more fat. I think people really liked hearing that, and so they ate more fat, but they didn't cut back on the sugar. And so it doesn't even have to be in the form of ice cream. You know, it can be something as simple. It doesn't. In other words, it doesn't even have to be the two things in the same food. It could just be the two things in the same meal, right? So you can have a high-fat meal and then follow it up with a lot of bread or processed carbohydrates that turns to glucose, and you pretty much accomplish the same thing that you would have with a bowl of ice cream, which is you've offset this wonderful trend and tendency toward becoming a fat-burning beast, and now you've just all you've done is increase your insulin and the tendency to store excess calories as fat.
You're talking about an omelet with some orange juice or a bowl of oatmeal. And,
exactly.
Seemingly good choices because they are nutritious or whatever we've been told. But, boy, that's a challenge because you're kind of going with a heavy rejection of carbs and then going into this keto scene and this thing that people have a lot of difficulty with. But interestingly, there's research that these extremely low-fat diets where you're just consuming carbs and don't have any fat to store because you're not eating any food, they actually work.
They work,
temporarily, I would argue.
Sure, but I mean, the concept is the same. Even though it's a mostly carbohydrate diet and the calories are sort of controlled for in some regard, the fact that you're not including a lot of fat or any fat in this case, you know, you've approached the issue of insulin sensitivity from the completely opposite spectrum. One is like a very high-fat diet with low carbohydrate. The other is a high carbohydrate diet with low fat, but it's all natural food. It's real food in both cases. And they can both work. But it's when you combine the two and try to get away with both that you really get into trouble. And I think a lot of people in the paleo community, a lot of people in the primal, you know, ancestral health world, even in the keto community, you know, they'll spend a day or maybe a meal doing really well and then have dessert or have something that would you know, not just kick them out of keto, but have that impact of raising insulin and kind of derailing the entire effort of improving metabolic flexibility through the manipulation of either removing the carbs in the case of a high-fat diet or sticking to a fairly strict high-carb diet without the fat.
Like the cyclic ketogenic folks who go hardcore during the week and then go binge on the weekend. I think Jacob Wilson, the Florida guy, did some research, and the people were in keto, strict keto eating for 5 days, allowed to go off on the weekend and have their pizza and ice cream, and then they went back, and it took them 5 days to get back into ketosis to the point where they had their next pizza served up. So it was a total disaster. They lost muscle mass and they gained fat.
So again, you know, we have all this information, we have all this research, and we can draw upon it, and we can craft a dietary, you know, way of eating that suits us individually. But you have to really pay attention to the science and make sure that when you do eliminate certain things from your diet or do agree to include other things, that you do it in a way that's following the research and generating the sort of results that you're seeking. And as we said, not somehow, you know, grabbing the best of two different ways of eating,
two different books on your shelf,
combining them in one, and then wondering why you don't get results.
Yeah, I mean, it does help me reconcile some of this confusion and controversy from the other side, where our buddy Rip Esselstyn, one of the leaders of the plant-based movement, he's doing fantastic work. He motivates people to eat healthy, colorful foods of the earth, and, you know, a devoted restriction of all kinds of fat, including that nasty olive oil, and just, you know, a different approach. But they have people who have lost weight, feel great, reverse heart disease with his father's work at Cleveland Clinic. And I'm wondering, you know, if that works for you long term and you're just happy to eat your leaves and your beans and your rice.
Some people are, and
you don't come up with nutritional deficiencies or things that you're not getting from the animal kingdom.
Right. If you're really diligent about it, it's not guaranteed that you will have problems.
Right.
You know, but you have to be diligent in these cases.
You got a cupboard full of B12 and whatever else.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think relatedly, when we're trying to think deeper about this theory of metabolic dysfunction, the research from Dr. Herman Pontzer's new book called Burn, when he went out and studied the Hadza and came up with this pretty breakthrough insight that humans have a ceiling on their daily caloric expenditure, and we find a way to downregulate caloric expenditure if we're a fitness freak burning so many calories in the gym.
Well, we find a way when we're not working out to downregulate the rest. So in other words, we're burning calories in the gym, and as a result, if we have this allowance, this daily allowance of calories, then what the body does is it says, oh my God, you work 2 hours in the gym and you burn 1,575 calories. So we're going to kind of downregulate how we burn calories throughout the rest of the day. So you'll notice when we were training, we would train hard and then we'd have to take a nap, right, and just do nothing for the rest of the day because that was the body's. It wasn't as if training hard gave you 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 calories worth of output for the day, and then you kept your same metabolic rate, and you were, because how could you even maintain a body weight that way? So the body has this amazing reserve that just says, okay, if I spend all these calories here, I got to conserve all these calories there, and it's really interesting science, because then it gets into what is it about people that then has them unable to lose weight when they seemingly are on diets, right? How come they're not able to lose weight if the body is still burning the same number of calories throughout the day?
Per my online calculation of my caloric burn. Right.
And it may be that any amount of exercise that you're trying to do and any amount of sacrifice you're trying to make in the name of adhering to a restricted eating program works for a short period of time, but then the brain just gets kind of sidetracked and looks for those hyperpalatable foods, those quick sources of cheap calories that get stored as either glycogen or body fat pretty quickly. And so there's it speaks to the idea that we should always be eating real food as opposed to these packaged crunchy, salty, fatty, sweet, hyperpalatable foods.
And besides the adjusting of the calorie burning with a more relaxed state, we have that great graphic in 2 Meals a Day where, and we did the calculations to verify this. The Saturday was 100-mile bike ride, watching NFL all afternoon when you get back, and eating an extra pint of ice cream and 2 extra servings of pasta. And then Sunday was gardening, walking the dog around the block, and having your regular meals. And it was a complete wash.
Right,
like the 100-mile bike ride did nothing
to offset,
contribute to that. Chris Kelly, Nourish, Balance, Thrive, made a great point on this matter when he said, locomotion, reproduction, repair, and growth are a zero-sum game. So if you borrow a lot from one, you're going to come at the expense. So locomotion, let's say you and I training for 5 hours a day. We were.
That's so funny. There you are on the screen coming up right there running. That's pretty funny.
I mean, but thinking back, my testosterone blood levels when I was an athlete in my 20s and my supposedly endocrine prime was
were those of an old man.
Right. And now I'm 55 and they're 4 to 5 times higher because I'm not borrowing so much on the locomotion side. And then repair and all that, your immune function, all that stuff gets compromised.
I mean, I'll go you one better. So you and I, the last couple of days, I went for a hard paddle out in the ocean 2 days ago, and it took a lot out of me. And I was kind of dragging ass the rest of the day. And then you and I did a hard ride on the sand yesterday, and it was like literally like we did nothing today. And it was because we were, the body was just like, I wasn't going to try and force myself to work out today because that's my body saying, look, I gotta compensate for the hard work that we did the other day. Does that make sense?
Oh my gosh. It's not into the brains of the human yet. And I think we're all in the back of our minds thinking we have to get out there and burn some energy to maintain fitness.
Yeah, and there's the assumption that you have to do it all the time, and that and there's the assumption that you can plow through it. So in the old days, we would have gotten up today and said, "Geez, I'm beat up from the workout yesterday and the workout the day before, but let's go run 15 because that's on the plan." Right.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, no, that's not. I don't feel compelled to do that. I'm listening to my human body, my my genetic recipe that wants me to be healthy, and it's telling me today's a day to take it easy.
Yeah, and I guess in a separate category is that obligation to just engage in general movement.
Yeah.
And you've always said it's not about the calories,
Yeah.
it's about the movement, which means...
Well, which means, we still moved around a lot today, but, walking and means some easy stretching sometimes. It means changing positions when you are sitting, getting up every once in a while, walking around the room. It's not a complex equation, and it's easy to do, to find ways to just move about. And again, as long as people understand that it isn't contemplated to have you burn calories. This is not about burning calories. It's just about moving through time and space,
Yeah.
and doing articulated movements that your body is designed to do.
For an assortment of benefits that are, well, I mean, it's sort of related to your body composition goals because you burn fat better
Right.
when you get up and move.
Yeah.
Not because of the
Calories
numbers
burned, yeah.
involved,
Yeah.
but just the efficiency versus wanting to snack all day because
Yeah.
you've been sitting around stuck in an office. And I think Katie Bowman makes a good distinction between cardiovascular fitness, which we developed pedaling those bikes through the deep sand
Right,
and
right.
cranking that heart so we could become a fitter bicycle rider.
Right.
But then there's cardiovascular health, which is the relative functioning of the cells throughout your body. And mechanotransduction, I think, is her term, where are your cells healthy at exchanging oxygen and burning energy? And those are things that are separate from the 1 hour that you put in, or if you're training 2 hours a day, that's still a small fraction of
the time,
the time of how you're using your body.
Yeah, I mean we're off camera. We're talking about the sort of the balance between six packs. And having a six-pack, low body fat body, and longevity, and are they in parallel as you go through life, or are they sometimes in conflict? And I think quite often they're in conflict. That the work you do to develop that extra loss of body fat, it has a cost. As you said, the locomotion, the reproduction, the different functions that the body has to sort of allocate resources to, and if it gets too much in one area, it takes from another. That's one of the things that's happening with people who are going overboard trying to get the cover of Shape magazine body or the 8-pack abs or whatever. Some people just aren't genetically pre-wired or predisposed to achieving that without a ton of work and a ton of potential cost to their health. So not everybody is going to be well served by going through life with a 8% body fat, for instance.
Well, with the bigger picture of where fitness comes in with your longevity goals, we now know on the cardiovascular side, oh my gosh, the bar is so freaking low that it's a joke. I mean, all the race businesses would be out of business if we knew. Dr. James O'Keefe, one of the leaders here, saying that a couple hours a week of cardio exercise at the right heart rate is sufficient to get you, an A+ score.
An A+ score, and by the way, extra credit drops your score down.
Right.
The more that you do, after a certain point of there's a point of diminishing returns, and then it falls off and they become negative returns. So, and I felt that for a long time, which is why I haven't run very much in the last 20 years. Riding the bike, I do it for my legs. I happen to get cardio in the process of riding the bike, but I'm doing it for my quads and my butt and my lower body primarily, especially when we're going in the sand and doing that hard stuff.
Well, everything's a bit of a cardio workout is a new insight that's come up.
Yeah.
And kind of negating the importance of going to the gym for the express purpose of working out your heart and lungs while doing something rudimentary like
and boring.
Climbing the stairs, boring. And possibly risking overuse patterns with the case of jogging and high impact
chronic repetitive motion stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I mean it's absolutely true. Everything we do that takes effort, it takes increased amounts of energy, calls the cardiovascular system into play, calls upon it to supply oxygen for the heart to beat faster and do all these things. So we really, I think, don't have to think that much about doing actual cardio stuff, which is, once again, why the other day I just decided, my 2 sort of hard days in a row was like, it's too much for my heart. Like, I don't need to work my heart out.
Yeah.
I got to figure out a way to work the rest of my body out and almost give my heart a rest, especially if I'm thinking in terms of longevity.
Mm-hmm. And it does call into question the prevailing goals of the endurance community here. And I like to make the wisecrack that we'd all be better off if the distances were halved, so that the marathon was 13.1 miles instead of 26. Who said 26? That was some Greek messenger.
Spiridon Lewis or whatever.
Yeah. And the Ironman was 3 random events put together. That, just because
a barroom bet.
Right. But we're still seeing these overtraining patterns that are incredibly common, and even in the casual enthusiast, putting all that time into climbing the stairs, when if you look at what's going on, let's say when they're going and trying to build muscle mass and going through the stations with these long breaks in between, the heart's still probably double resting heart rate when you're in between a set and talking to somebody, and then you're going back and putting out more work to build muscle mass. So it could transition the goals into something that's more broad than needing to pound this heart every single day.
No, I mean, I just read a little piece about the Tarahumara Indians in the Copper Canyon who are featured in Born to Run, and it turns out they don't really train for these 50-mile races that they do. In fact, they're supposed to not train and then do these races based on their lifestyle and just based on how they live and based on, it's almost like, I guess, cheating to train, because it's more of a spiritual experience as part of this race. So, as I like to tell people, I train for life now, so I don't need to train for a 10K. I'm not going to enter a 10K, but I train to be competent in as many sports as I can be without getting injured, and along the way, I achieve some level of cardiovascular fitness as a result of the work that I do, even though I'm not dedicating any of these specific workouts to just doing cardio.
So the next component would be, let's say, muscle mass and how that correlates to longevity extremely well and incredibly important. So I suppose there's a point where you're beyond your maximum functional muscle mass if you're a big gym rat that's obviously carrying around way more than is necessary for anything but hoisting the heavy weights. But where's that balance point at all age groups? Including,
I mean, the balance point, I don't know, some of it has to do with your familial genetics, right? Like, what did I inherit? A body type, mesomorph, ectomorph, metamorph from my parents. But really, the issue as we get older is one of what we call sarcopenia, loss of muscle mass. So people suffer as they age, and the biggest indicator of senility and aging is the loss of muscle mass. So it behooves everyone to do whatever they can to build and maintain muscle mass for as long as they can. To your point, up to a point, it becomes ridiculous if you're doing massive amounts of steroids and lifting heavy weights and you've got this huge bulky figure. But if you are someone who is interested in living a quality long life, we absolutely have to talk about mobility. Like, what defines a quality of life? 2 things in my mind: cognition, memory, access to memories, and being able to carry on a conversation, appreciate the world. And so, dementia and Alzheimer's are a big issue there. And mobility, the ability to move throughout the world and enjoy interacting with nature and moving from place to place and being able to get out of bed in the morning and go do things and perform tasks and meet with people and play games if that's your thing. So mobility becomes crucial to the quality of life. And what happens to people as they get older is they tend to focus less on mobility. So they're sitting more. Maybe they have more aches and pains. This kind of is a positive feedback cycle that says the more aches and pains I have, the less I'm going to work out. The less I'm going to work out, the more aches and pains I'm going to have. So you got to get people out of the chair, out of bed, and working out in the gym. Why is that? Well, the entire body works on this sort of synchronistic system whereby we make a decision to move. And in making a decision to move and to use our muscles and to stress those muscles a little bit and perform an activity, the muscle, which now needs access to blood flow and oxygen and nutrients, the muscle there's a system whereby the heart starts to pump more because it has to supply the nutrients to this muscle to perform the task. The lungs have to inspire more. You have to breathe in more to provide the oxygen, also to allow the muscle to work. The liver has to be more functioning to be able to clear toxins and clear waste. The kidneys, same thing, have to clear waste. And it goes on so that every organ in our body is attached to some amount of muscle activity, right? And in the case of sarcopenia, when you lose muscle, the body is going, well, let's see, we're not doing that much, we're not getting out of the sofa, so we don't need to spend precious resources building bone density, right? Because I'm not stressing the structure at all. So bone density suffers. There's no reason for the heart to pump vigorously because we're not doing any activity. So the function of the heart diminishes and you lose capacity in the heart. Same with the lungs. The lungs don't have to breathe in because you're just, you're taking in small breaths all day. You're not doing much activity. The muscles are atrophying, and in so doing, they're not requiring the input of all these other systems, all these other organs. And so over time, it isn't just that we lose muscle mass, but we lose what we call organ reserve. We lose the ability of the rest of our organs to keep up with us. And in the event that there's some catastrophe, like an infection, now we're not able to combat the infection. So when we're looking at COVID this year, for instance, there are a lot of people who have heart issues, who have lung issues. COPD and lung issues have been a big thing with COVID. And this is a disease that sort of attaches itself to, it likes lung tissue and tries to mess with it, right? And if you don't have the capacity to withstand it, you will succumb, you will die. As people get older, this is sort of the thing I've talked about many times in the past, but as you lose muscle mass, as you lose organ reserve, and as these things start to fall apart, the classic scenario is, and my aunt, my 90-year-old aunt, this just happened to her. You get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, you trip over something because you haven't worked on balance. You can't catch yourself because you're not strong enough to catch yourself. You can't even, you put your arms out but it doesn't work, and you fall and you break a hip because your bone density is so bad. Your bones are so brittle because you haven't worked on the bone density. You haven't given the bones a reason to maintain the tensile structure, so you wind up in the hospital with a fractured hip. Now you're in the hospital lying in bed, and we know that a lot of infections happen in the hospital. Now maybe you get pneumonia, and maybe because your lungs are not strong because you haven't used them for decades, you haven't done any of this muscle building activity to create this lean mass. The lungs have had no reason to really work more than 10 or 15%. But now all of a sudden you're in the hospital, you get pneumonia, you can't cough out the sputum. Now your heart, which has to kind of keep up and pump oxygen to the rest of your body, so your blood oxygen, your pulse ox as they call it, diminishes because not only can you not breathe in full amounts of air, but your heart's not pumping forcefully enough to get it to the other tissue. And so some people die of pneumonia, some people die of congestive heart failure, ultimately because they didn't work out in the gym, ultimately because they lost muscle mass, and ultimately because the muscle mass is tied to this organ reserve. As your muscle mass diminishes, and as you get to this condition known as sarcopenia, all the organ reserve kind of goes down the tubes with it. So nobody really dies of old age. We die of organ failure as a result of the weakest link in our bodies finally giving up the ghost.
Yeah, I mean, the actual functional capacity of the organs is known to be around 120 years.
Yeah.
And so if we, if we fought this battle better, and I'm scared straight right now listening to you, man. I don't want to go through that pain and suffering. And your buddy Walter, my dad, was such a great example, and he kept it going so strong into his mid-90s, and then had a really quick and painless 2-year demise.
Yep.
And I feel like his motivation and his physical capacity declined at the same rate. So
Yes.
we'd get him out and walk around the park every day for a half a mile when he was 90, 91, 92, 93, 94. And then he started to kind of balk at it. Well, I'm not going to go the whole way. I'll wait here on this bench. Well, come on, let's just go to the next bench. And it was really a beautiful thing to see, because at a certain point, we all deserve to kick back. And if you don't feel like walking a half mile around the park when you're 95, it's going to contribute to your demise, but you're 95, so it's okay.
And you're complicit. You're
complicit. You're in control.
You're in control of it. Yeah.
But falling and coming to this misfortune it's just so tragic to see.
Yeah.
That part, it seems like we can do a much better job, and maybe people feel like it's too daunting because of the fitness programming and the industry.
Maybe, but I'll give it. Here's my other example. So I got COVID this year, right? I got it 2 months ago.
He looks okay to me,
and it was a non-event for me. It was like a summer cold. Lasted 3 days, 2.5 days. Never a fever. And I tell people I've been training my whole life for COVID. So I was trained for COVID, and I hear stories about people have horrible experiences with it, and I empathize with people who've lost loved ones or still struggling with it. But in my case, I feel like I've been training my whole life. I've maintained all of these systems, including my immune system, including my gut health, and I think so much of our immune system is resident in our gut. So I pay a lot of attention to that, and I feel like that's really the issue going forward with whether it's this pandemic or whether it's the next one that's going to be around the block. This isn't about vaccines and masks and social distancing as much as it's about building up a healthy immune system to be able to combat this in a way that we are all designed to do. It's just that some of us have lost the ability.
Well, heck, we used to go to basketball games and yell and scream with 17,000 other people. I remember when the Lakers and Showtime were in their peak, you'd be hugging strangers after Magic came down and threw a pass to win the game. And somehow we were able to withstand all the stuff that's on every door handle all winter long.
So I don't want to make light of this, but I do want to say that my view of longevity has much more to do with muscle mass. So with Walter, with your dad, I would have said, let's get him standing next to a lamppost and do 20 deep squats, air squats as far down as he can get without getting too far down, maybe having somebody spot him, and build the muscle mass, build the glutes, build the hamstrings, build the quads, and do it that way. Getting out in fresh air is certainly, and that's part of the movement aspect of what we're talking about, moving around a lot. But it's also building and maintaining muscle mass is crucial.
Yeah. And again, it seems like a shortcoming in general, because you go to the gym and the machines are all full for cardio, and then especially the free weights are sitting there. I think there's an intimidation factor. So for me, it's kind of exciting to see this trend, this increasing popularity of micro workouts. Thanks to you and I and others. But I feel like it's the fitness breakthrough of the century to have a new mindset, to realize that you don't have to be a crazy musclehead and go and lift all these heavy things
for an hour or two at a time
and get tired. And a lot of people have had probably a bad experience with a trainer where they went for their package, they did 12 sessions, they were sore. We now know from the leading experts in fitness that you shouldn't get sore, and you don't want to get sore during workout. What? And now you can kind of reposition this to even a home-based situation, since we are obligated in recent times to be stuck at home, where you can become not just fit, but super fit and extremely good with your muscle mass quotient.
I just have to laugh at how little strength training I do now. My sessions that used to be an hour and 10 minutes are like 17 minutes now, even in the gym. And if I don't go to the gym, I'll do these micro workouts, these sets of push-ups here or squats there. I have resistance bands that I use, take a break. And I feel like that really, and the science is now showing smaller, shorter amounts of more intense bursts of output are very beneficial. So the most recent one was like 4 seconds of all-out sprinting on an Airdyne, bike on an ergometer, has pretty profound impact on muscle strength, on mitochondrial function, even on cardiovascular output. So it's pretty interesting that it's almost like getting to the point where less is more, provided you hold the intensity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let me check my notes. It seems like it's all about moving frequently at a slow pace, lifting heavy things, and sprinting once in a while.
That's a novel concept.
To get to that finish line.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about the sprinting specifically and those bursts of output? And we're talking about a hormonal response that's drastically superior to the chronic overproduction of stress hormones with the chronic cardio.
I mean, sprinting is still my favorite activity. It's not easy to do, and it takes kind of a mindset, and I can only do it once a week. And usually I do it in concert with playing ultimate frisbee. Mm-hmm. So when I'm playing ultimate, I'm forced to sprint to get down to the other end of the field. But if I have a week off or 2 weeks off, the other day I went to our park down here and I did 8 60-meter sprints with a 2-minute rest in between.
So under 10 seconds of effort.
Yeah.
With a huge rest afterward.
Yeah. And it was really, I felt like I'd done something at the end of that workout. And I remember when we trained for track and field, and we trained for these long distance events. And I remember doing I did 16 half-mile repeats one time at 2:24 to 2:28
with short rest,
with a walk jog in between. And that took and that workout took an hour, and I was hammering the whole time. And now I feel like I'm refreshed from this workout. Yeah. I feel like I benefited from this short workout, and I'm really looking back and I'm like, well, all I was doing was sort of practicing hurting myself, practicing the discomfort, and grinding it out as to replicating what I was going to feel during a marathon when I was running a marathon. But I don't know how much it really impacted my ratcheting up of my training and my performance.
Yeah. Well, you said a few years ago, I guess it was a delayed epiphany, that we don't really need to train the brain to suffer of what we're going to face in a marathon race or whatever the goal is, the ultra or whatever we're training for. Yeah. The brain can do it on demand. And I make the analogy of, if I put a gun to your head right now, we could go do a marathon.
Yeah.
We wouldn't come out of it too well.
No.
But
we could make it happen.
The idea that you have to suffer over and over and over to excel in something is ridiculous. And then Dr. Phil Maffetone put through another piece that I put together here that's you don't really need to train the anaerobic muscle fibers at a huge extent because they're not using oxygen. They're explosive. They fire. They need a lot of recovery.
Yeah.
So you're taking these sprints that last 6, 7, 8 seconds and resting 2 minutes in between. It's not super grueling.
Right.
It doesn't kill you. You're not staggering off the thing. You're feeling kind of light on your feet, and I think that's a big breakthrough, is just to rest more.
And again, it's I'm doing these as a component part of my training to be able to play frisbee better, for instance. So I'm not doing these for the sake of doing these. This is not an event that I'm doing. Yeah. So I can take 2 minutes. I can recover fully between, and I can clear all the lactate. In the old days, I would have said, it's like when you go to the pool, and you're swimming, hundreds on the minute 30 or minute 40 or whatever,
minute 5
and whatever. But I mean, whatever you finished in, you went immediately on the 120. So if you did the lap slower, you got less rest. If you did it faster, it hurt more, but you only got a few seconds more rest, because you always had to go on the click on the 120 or whatever, right?
The
send off, and it's like, that had an application, but that's brutal. That was just that was
It's for competitive preparation only.
Yeah.
And there's no health benefit to a exhausting, depleting workout.
Right,
particularly the glycogen depleting aspects of an interval workout. And HIIT is the greatest trend, and it's been the hot term in fitness for so long. I love how Dr. Craig Marker repositioned that with a great article called HIIT versus HURT.
Yeah.
HURT meaning high intensity repeat training.
Yeah.
So when you did your 8, how many did you do? The 8 sprints?
The other day, 8 sprints.
So your 7th and 8th one, I was watching from the balcony above, they were of similar quality to the first one, because you were rested, maybe even warmed up and even better.
They were better. Didn't lose form.
And your 16th half mile repeat, you were walking dead and digging so deep. I know you're hitting the right time. That's an important distinction to make. Like you're still hitting your time on the 16th one,
but losing form.
It's coming at a cost of months of recovery and destroying your will and your brain to go do it when it really counts.
No, I mean I'll never forget that workout, and I think it probably left a good race somewhere in the next 6 weeks. There would have been a much better race that I had done, except I left it on the track. I put it all out there. So, all right, let's move on from these workout things. What do we got?
What about the nice way that we broke up our day with that cold plunge at your amazing facility? And cold exposures turning into one of the popular biohacking maneuvers of the time. It's getting some good research behind it, and people are extolling the benefits. What do you think? Where does that?
So
fit
here's
into
what
your
I think. I think I love hot water, so I love saunas and jacuzzis and steams. I don't like cold water at all, so I do it. So I don't, even though there are all the anti-inflammatory benefits that are touted for cold water and cold therapy and cryotherapy, I do it for my mind. So I literally, today I did 4.5 minutes at 48 degrees, and it's just a mind game, right? And then I get out and warm up and go back. So I'm a fan. I do it a lot, but I do it mostly for the mental meditative aspect of it, and not so much because I'm feeling any sort of anti-inflammatory benefits. That's just my personal preference.
Well, I mean, you get a wonderful wake-up call and an increase in alertness and mood-elevating hormones.
The rest of the day was great. It was like, because I usually do this at 6 at night, between 6 and 6:30 or 6:35 is my routine, and then I come back and have, I play drums for an hour, and then I have dinner, and then I sleep like a baby. But today we did it before lunch, and so the rest of the day was very calm and relaxed, and we didn't have anything to do except this. So it was kind of it was nice to have it be in the earlier part of the day for me.
I agree. The psychological benefits seem to be the most profound, and every time I'm about to jump in my chest freezer, I tell a story in my head. Like, maybe I'll sweep the kitchen floor first. It's looking kind of... I better answer those emails first. And it's always this battle of, trying to make an excuse and procrastinate and all those things that we complain about in daily life, in our work life, or our goals with parenting, relationships, personal improvement. And so if I can be one of those people that can override the chatter and do something. Tony Robbins, huge fan. He says it's my brain telling my body what to do, to not hesitate but to act. And so if we can leverage that, if I can leverage that into
other stuff, other
my
tasks.
email inbox, that's a big thing.
Right.
And I invite everybody to dabble in this for the physical benefits as well as the increased appreciation of that sauna. When we went in there, I guarantee you, of all the people that use the sauna today, in Miami, Florida, mind you, we appreciated it more than anybody because we just got out of cold water.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's a very I didn't like cold water for the longest time, and so for me it was I needed to overcome that, right? And in order
that poor Maine boy,
I know,
doesn't like cold water.
In order to overcome that, I had to come up with sort of a device that I would use, and my device was, it's not good or bad, it's just a sensation.
Right. Yeah.
So when I walk in, it's not good or bad. Whatever I'm feeling isn't. I don't assign a positive or a negative value to it. It's just a sensation, and that's kind of how I start the process.
Yeah. I'm trying to do the same thing. Like, don't judge it.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite podcast guests, my buddy Dave Rossi, he kind of wants you to apply that to all areas of life.
For sure.
Like, here's a traffic jam. I'm stuck in it. I'm going to miss my flight, whatever. Don't judge it. There may be a silver lining, or all those kind of things where we have to we stay in the moment and stay mindful. And it's so difficult because we're trying to nitpick our way to an optimum life, but in the process we can compromise happiness.
Yeah, miss out on some other opportunities. Yeah.
Speaking of that, since we're drifting now, do you see like a balance point between not judging things and being okay and being in acceptance, and then turning on your kicking ass genes to say, hey, you're screwing me over in this business relationship and I'm going to sue your ass unless you make it straight. You know what I mean? Like, diverging from, hey, Mark's a spiritual go with the flow kind of guy, but he also has climbed a competitive ladder setting.
Yeah,
and,
no, I get it. I think that comes under the heading of, just choose your battles. Choose your battles wisely. Yeah. And it also comes under the heading of absolutely have goals and absolutely do what you need to work toward those goals, but release attachment to the outcome. And
it's so easy.
When I've
just try it, people.
When I've done that, which I've pivoted a lot in my career. When I've done that, some of the magic has really happened. So when I've released attachment to the outcome of look, Primal Kitchen started because I was really frustrated with my supplement business, and I kept thinking, I've got to find the answer to the supplement thing. I've got to find the answer to selling more supplements and attracting more people and letting people know I have this amazing product. And I was missing the big picture, which was that I talk about food all the time, and I talk about real food. And what is it that makes real food palatable? It's what we put on them: sauces, dressings, toppings, methods of preparation, herbs and spices, and things like that. So it was when I released attachment to the outcome of my supplement company succeeding that I was able to pivot and go, oh my God, this bigger, better opportunity has been sitting in front of me for at least 10 years, and I've ignored it.
Yeah.
So,
and you talk about the restaurant venture, which was not successful, and you hung in there because you don't like to lose.
Yeah.
But it was attachment to the outcome.
Same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing. Well, an attachment to the outcome also involves not abandoning. It's like, when many of our friends would get into a marathon or an Ironman and not be having their best day.
Yeah.
And probably should have dropped out.
Yeah.
No attachment to the outcome.
Yeah.
But they decided to hang in there because they felt that it was going to do them better psychologically to get through it.
Yeah.
And so part of that was my mindset in the restaurant thing, was I didn't want to give up too soon. I didn't want, maybe there was going to be a chance that I could resurrect this. So, it's definitely a fine line between being, sort of like, the world is wonderful and I'll just put it out there and the law of attraction will make everything happen. Or if it doesn't happen, oh well, it wasn't meant to be. Versus having a goal, going toward that goal, being aware of all the opportunities or other things that are either coming along or interfering, obstacles or possibilities, and being attuned to it, and then being able to make an informed decision as to whether or not to pivot. So I can't give people a rule of thumb on that because everybody's different, and some entrepreneurs are voracious, tenacious, litigious, and they get what they want. I try not to be that way.
Yeah.
But I still try to get what I want.
Yeah. Arguably, the material success that we place so much emphasis on in modern life, but it's no guarantee of happiness. It's no guarantee that the person's not a jerk. And I think those things need to count for more.
Yep.
And I also see from your journey, like, you had this intense desire to make things right and to call out conventional wisdom that was killing people.
Yeah.
And you said, I want to do a book. I'm going to do this blog. And it was hideously expensive with no sign of any economic benefit
Right.
for quite some time, but you were compelled to do it. And
Yeah.
so that's like the ultimate example of not being attached to the outcome. And guess what? A lot of people buy your mayonnaise now, but I think people, if you make the mistake of segmenting the Mark Sisson path into, he hustled and put his picture on the mayonnaise and it sold a lot and now it's great.
Yeah.
That's not how this wave was ridden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
40-year overnight success story.
Well, that's been a lot of fun and games here. I think we've hit some hot topics.
Cool.
Thank you very much for listening and watching, people.